resident, resident, resident. So, let's talk about the word resident. The part of speech is noun, and it refers to a person who lives in a particular place, usually permanently, often with their family. In common usage, people use resident to describe someone who has a strong connection to a community or location, whether that's a city, town, or even a specific neighborhood. For example, you might hear someone say, "My sister is a resident of New York City," to mean she lives there. What's also important to note is that resident can be used in formal contexts, like in official documents or government reports, and it can also imply a level of authority or expertise. So if someone is a resident expert on a particular subject, it means they're an expert who actually lives in the community being discussed. In the context of a formal announcement, such as a city council meeting, the esteemed mayor proudly declared that our newly appointed resident artist, Ms. Thompson, would be leading a public art initiative in our downtown area, bringing much-needed vibrancy to the community. Here, resident is used to denote someone who holds a specific title or position within a particular location. In contrast, during a casual conversation between friends at a coffee shop, one might say, "I'm so glad you're here today. It's always great to have my resident movie buff and film expert, Alex, weigh in on our discussion about the latest Oscar nominees." In this context, resident is used to humorously emphasize someone's expertise or reputation within their social group. Finally, in a business setting, such as a company newsletter, one might write, "Our team has been fortunate enough to have Dr. Lee, a renowned expert and resident neuroscientist, join our research panel for the upcoming industry conference." Here, resident is used to indicate that someone holds a key position or role within their field of expertise, lending credibility and authority to the discussion at hand. So, you want to know about this word that means someone who lives in a particular place, usually for a longer period of time, not just visiting? Okay, let me break it down for you. A person who calls a certain area home, where they have a permanent address and often a fixed routine, is what we're talking about. They might own or rent a house, apartment, or even a small business there. It's like the opposite of someone who's just passing through or on vacation. This person has roots in that place. Some people might think it sounds similar to inhabitant, which also refers to someone living in a particular area. But our word is more about being part of the local community and having a sense of belonging there. Think about it like this. When you meet someone who lives in your neighborhood or town, they're not just visiting. They're one of us. That's what we mean by this word. Resource. 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 Let's talk about the word resource. As a teacher, I'm happy to break it down for you. So, resource is a noun, which means it refers to a person, place, thing, or idea. In common usage, you'll often hear people talking about resources in terms of materials, information, or services that can be used to help with a particular task or goal. For example, a teacher might say, "The library is a valuable resource for students who need help with research." Or, someone might talk about the natural resources of their country, like water or coal. One special note about using resource is that it's often used in formal or professional contexts. So you might hear it more in business meetings or educational settings than in everyday conversations. Here are 3 practical example sentences using the word resource with their respective contexts. I attended a conference on sustainable development at the university where the keynote speaker emphasized the importance of utilizing local resources to reduce carbon footprint and promote eco-friendly practices. In this context, the formal usage of the word resource highlights the environmental aspect of the topic. Later that evening, I was chatting with my friend who's into hiking, and she mentioned that her favorite trailhead has an abundance of natural resources such as streams and forests that make for a wonderful outdoor experience. Here, in a casual conversation, the word resource is used to describe the natural features of the terrain. My colleague and I were discussing our company's new project management software, which utilizes human capital, technology, and other available resources to streamline processes and increase productivity. In this business academic context, the word resource refers to the various assets or inputs that are essential for achieving a specific goal or objective. So, you're trying to figure out what this thing is that people often talk about in educational contexts. Okay, let me try to explain. A useful tool for learning something new has several key features. It's something that provides help and support to learners as they study a subject or skill. It can be physical, like a book or a computer program, or intangible, like an idea or a concept. What's really important is that it helps people learn more efficiently and effectively by giving them access to the information and guidance they need to succeed. Now, you might also hear people talking about study aids or learning materials when referring to this same thing, essentially anything that assists learners in achieving their goals. Restrict. 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 So, let's talk about the verb restrict as a part of speech. Restrict means to limit or put a restriction on something, such as a person, group, or activity. In common usage, you might hear people say that a new law restricts the sale of certain products in a particular area, or that a rule restricts students from using their phones during class. What's important to note is that when we use restrict, it implies that there was something more available before, and now it's being limited. For example, I love traveling abroad, but my company's policy restricts me from taking too many days off. The key thing to keep in mind with restrict is that it often carries a negative connotation, implying that freedom or option is being taken away. So, if you want to say something similar, but with a more neutral tone, you might consider using the word limit instead. So you're looking to learn how to use the word restrict in different contexts. I'd be happy to help. In formal usage, you might say something like, the university has decided to restrict access to the new laboratory to authorized personnel only, due to safety concerns. This sentence is useful for academic or professional settings where precision and clarity are crucial. Moving on to casual conversation. Let's consider this example. I'm trying to cut back on sweets, so I'm restricting myself to just one dessert a week. It's tough, but I know I'll feel better in the long run. This sentence is perfect for everyday chats with friends or family members where you want to convey a sense of personal responsibility. Lastly, in business or academic usage, you might say, the company's new policy aims to restrict the use of company resources for personal gain, thereby promoting a culture of transparency and accountability among employees. So when we talk about something being restricted, what that means is that there are certain rules or limits in place that keep it from happening freely or being fully available. It's like having a rule at school where you can't have your phone out during class. You're not allowed to use it because it might be distracting. Main characteristics of this idea include things like rules, limits, and permissions. Similar concepts or synonyms could be things like limited access, regulations, or even just plain old rules. When something is restricted, that means certain people or groups may not be able to do it, see it, or have it because of those rules or limits. For example, some restaurants might have a waiting list for tables during peak hours. They're restricting the number of tables available to keep things running smoothly.